All right. Hey guys, welcome in. Tyler Jeffcoat here with Return on Podcast. Thanks for joining today's episode. As a seller, as a brand owner, as someone who's trying to scratch out a living on Amazon or in a direct to consumer channel, how many times do we find ourselves thinking, is our supplier really giving us the runaround? Do we have the best terms possible? Am I even working directly with my factory? Can I trust my sourcing agent? Can I trust my trading company? Is there a better way to ship my product and save a few bucks on the Asia to North America, stint across the ocean? Or maybe you're just kind of reacting to the current landscape where Amazon fees are higher, there's placement fees, there's more pressure on our profit margins. If those are problems that resonate with you, today's episode is going to be a slam dunk. I'm bringing back my friend. We had him on last year. His name's Josh Gilliam, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, successful Amazon seller as a seven-figure brand in the coffee kind of camping space. And I can't wait for you to hear this interview where we learn how Josh felt those feelings, the ones I just described to you, and did something about it, dusted off the passport, went and spent time in China, found a bunch of lost inventory in one of the factories that he'd been working with, and was able to renegotiate better terms. And what he came to figure out might surprise you. It actually made more sense for him to build out a little bit more of his supply chain in order to ensure that he wasn't dealing with unnecessary middlemen and to ensure that he could get the best deal from his suppliers. That's what today's episode of ROP is all about. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoy this interview with Josh Gilliam. It's time to maximize profitability and cash flow. It's time to learn habits and hacks from the best e-com CEOs. It's time for Return on Podcast with me, Tyler Jeffcoat.
Yeah.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Return on Podcast. I'm excited to bring back on one of my favorite guests, Josh Gilliam. How you doing today, man?
Hey, Tyler, doing great. Thanks for inviting me back.
You got it, buddy. And for those of you guys who may not remember this, about a year ago, I don't even remember what episode it was, Josh and I had a great discussion about how his seven-figure Amazon business had inventory stuck in a warehouse in China. And Josh did that thing, we talk about it, where he dusted off his passport, time to drink sake, kiss babies. Let's fly over there. Let's talk to our suppliers. And let's not only negotiate better terms and pricing on our products, but hell, let's find strong 5 figures worth of inventory just sitting in the corner of a warehouse. Josh, for those that don't remember that story, give us the 60-second reminder. I mean, this is just an unbelievable story.
Oh, no, actually it happened twice with 2 different suppliers. One of them was just walking through, the floor, and he just kind of nonchalantly said, "Oh yeah, those pallets over there, those are your glass tops." And I was like, "My glass tops?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you had a truckload delivered here 2 years ago or something like that." And we had forgotten, we were, had already ordered it. It was $15,000 worth of inventory that certainly played for a plane ticket and a good bit of sake, as you said. So that was one. And then another one, I can't remember, but it was something similar to that I wouldn't have been able to locate that inventory unless it actually showed up. Part of it was, I guess, because we're disorganized. And so other people out there probably don't have my kind of problems, I'm sure.
Nobody has.
Yeah, everybody's much more organized than me.
Actually, I would say, Josh, this may come as a shock to you, but you're not the only seven-figure Amazon private label brand owner who wakes up one day and realizes, oh man, my inventory is a mess and I've got to figure it out. And to your credit, by the way, and through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I kind of feel like, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but I kind of feel like you've taken some meaningful steps to kind of solve some of those inventory management problems. Is that still kind of proven to be true?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We hired 2 full-time folks in China. We started a Chinese trading company, then kind of scheduling every 6 months to go maintain those supplier relationships, not only with the people that we've hired, but with the factories that we're working with. One of my objectives the first time we went, Tyler, was to negotiate better terms. Okay. And I couldn't affect that over email. I couldn't affect it over Zoom. I had to sit there with the guy for 2 different days, figure out through his body language, what his interest is, and then devise a plan to make everybody win. But we were able to land 60-day terms on our inventory through him, which is, he's about about 60% of our purchases come through him. So that was a big win that would have been able to be accomplished.
And that 60 days, Josh, how did that compare to what was kind of prior? Like, what was the standard terms for that particular
Oh,
supplier?
I mean, just the standard terms everybody gets, right? 30% down and 70% upon, leaving the factory. And so right now we are just net 60 for the whole thing. And really that's turned into about net 80. Um, just because it just takes a while for him to invoice us. And then, since I'm sending it like from my account in, Wells Fargo US, basically to my trading company, and from the trading company onto the supplier. So
Mm.
we have some efficiencies that we didn't have before, because we got to eliminate the trading company that he was using and was charging the markup. Plus, he was charging us for VAT, and we got to not only take the margin that the trading company had, but he got to take the VAT off the invoice,
Wow.
because now the trading company is responsible for paying the VAT and then getting the VAT remitted back to them from the government. And so that's kind of another 15% on COGS that we're able to discover by pulling the string back to the source.
And so, like, because of all those things you just mentioned, hey, I'm developing brands, products for my coffee and outdoor lifestyle brand. I
Yeah.
decide that I've got no choice but to do the work, go to China. You end up building Bozeman. You have a trading company, and they have Bozeman Manufacturing. Is that the same thing, or are those two different companies?
It's the same company, but just kind of a different arm of it.
Yeah.
We just solved the problem for ourselves, and we were. Uh, I hope it's all right to say that I'm part of Tyler's. Just has an awesome mastermind. I've been part of it for a couple of years. That I've learned so much from the other guys there, that are also 7, 8 figure Amazon sellers. And one of them was in our group in July, a couple of Julys ago, and he was like, he had this, we'll just call it a widget, right? And he's like, I can get this thing landed for $30, and we're selling like 3,000 a month. And I just knew right then I could get it landed for half that. And so we have a relationship with that gentleman now to just kind of be their one stop China. I think a lot of, at least we'll just call him Mark. He was like, I'm sick of dealing with Alibaba and with people. The guy named Jim. We all know his name's not Jim. That can email you in broken English. And anyway, there's just some inefficiencies, aren't the right word, but some frustrations there that I was able to kind of use the network that we developed in order to help him reduce his COGS. And you just have to deal with Jim anymore.
I
And
love that.
so,
I mean, so going back to you talk about kind of like noise. I almost think about it like the bucket. There's holes in the bucket. My observation, learning alongside you, Josh, is that there's a lot of value lost in the supply chain. You mentioned one thing being like VAT, the trading company. Like, just kind of backing out a little bit. Like, where are places that the average seven-figure Amazon seller doesn't even realize that they're losing money, that they
uh,
it's a black box.
yeah, that's such a great question, and I would love to be a fly on the wall as you ask that question to a number of big Amazon sellers, because we're still learning. One of the things that I think people don't realize is, in order to access like the best factories with the best prices, um, you have to go through a trading company.
Mhm.
Those factories don't have an export license. They can't deal in dollars. They don't speak English. They just don't really have access to the international markets. So they have to go through a trading company. And so it's just like a black veil, like what that trading company's margin is. So if you go into Alibaba, you're either dealing with a trading company or with a factory that has spent the money to set up its own export arm, which is expensive, right? So they need to charge for that. And so having your own trading company allowed us to go to the factory, like, off the beaten path, where they only make that one widget. It's pretty basic, but they can do it well, of course, with adult supervision. Um, and so I think that's the biggest one where we discovered value. I was paying, I'm not ashamed to say, we sell like camping coffee percolators. If you want to compete with me, go for it. The margins aren't great. Uh, but, we were selling for like $10, and then we were able to move it to more like $6 through getting back to the factory. So it was a meaningful margin improvement. Um,
But actually,
so
you bring up a really good point. You're not the
Yeah.
first one I've heard mention this. The idea that like you go to Alibaba, you do the email thing back and forth, and you operate under the assumption that you're doing business with a factory, but you're actually in actuality you're not. You're doing business with a additional layer of bureaucracy that allows that factory to reach the
That
states.
yes and no. I mean, so a lot of times you are talking to a factory, but that factory is like located in, a major metropolitan in Shenzhen.
Uh,
It's like the difference between like my accountant is from New York City or my accountant is from like, hometown Nebraska. Like
right.
they're going to have different rates because there's different costs of living.
Got it.
And so the factories you're dealing with are just sophisticated enough to be on Alibaba, to be able to like operate in English, to have went through the hoops, to have the legal stuff set up to be able to export, internationally. Um, but to access the factories that just do that one thing and have a pretty low overhead, you have to bust through that and get to China. Yeah, or really you have to either work through a trading company that you trust, or I think create your own. And that's what we did. And that's pretty helpful, because not only is it helpful to like bust through the layers, but then I'm dealing with a factory owner, not through a middleman. Like I am the owner of the trading company. So what enables us to do is there's more trust, because we can have a legal binding agreement in Chinese between a Chinese factory and a Chinese trading company,
Okay.
where I'm the owner. So it's hard to get terms if you're just like some US company in America, because the agreement you sign isn't really enforceable in court. Or at least, what court is it enforceable in? Like we haven't had that. You might like, anyway, the bottom line is, if you, with the trading company, we're able to negotiate better terms, because they're going to allow the inventory to be released from the factory, because they know they can sue a domestic company if anything goes wrong, right?
Okay. I love
That's
that. I
another.
mean, well, because I asked you about like where value is. Like, there's so much hidden value in what you just said. You guys remember early in this conversation we talked about Josh, the Saki trip, right? I'm flying to China. It's overwhelming to even imagine having that kind of face to face dialogue, man to man, woman to woman dialogue with a human being, but then to be able to add to that the layer of, hey, you're doing your own risk management, Chinese factory, and I actually have a trading company that is domiciled in such a way that we can have a legally enforceable contract. Guys, do you realize you just like, if you think about it, you're trying to get like a car loan and you either have like a 400 credit score or an 800 credit score, like the ability to
Yeah,
get great pricing and terms because you can
yeah,
lower the risk profile that's huge, right?
yeah, yeah. And I got lucky with finding, the guy that I trust in China. I found him on Upwork. There's a lot of people just tuned out right there, right? But I was looking for a product a designer, and so he had spent 8 years in America. He got his master's in uh, in Chicago, got his PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Minnesota, and then he went back to China. And so finding him was just a godsend, because my first trip, we just had a great relationship. He speaks fluent English. He speaks engineering, right?
Mm.
So that's one of the things that I can do, is I can give him an engineering problem, and he can either work with the engineers at the factory, or if they don't have any, he can be that engineer or contract with that engineer, and he can talk the talk, right? And bring a product to life. But having him, who is a pretty sophisticated guy, doing those negotiations for me, or at least with me. There's been a couple times, like in the translation, he's kind of like said, "Yeah, I didn't translate that as you asked me to, Josh, because that was an appropriate question." And so, uh, anyway, there was some luck that happened as well, Tyler.
But
Hey, one
listen,
of the other efficiencies I
Josh,
just pointed. Oh, go
go,
ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, just on the shipping front. And so one of the reasons to go to China is to sit down with freight forwarders. And so, I made an appointment with a couple of those guys, and they said, "You're the first person ever to come see us." Um, and so they were very willing at that point to extend terms and to, give us good rates. Um, and so, that's an inefficiency that, just visiting those guys that help. Another thing is, we have a full-time person that just manages shipments. And so while some sellers are using stuff like, what is that guy that the Ship Drip, I think?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and now it's really moving to this, if you small parcel, direct from China to consumer, that's the next wave. If you have something that's light, that's brilliant. But we essentially created our own Ship Drip by just having a person managing from the factory, small shipments, in every couple weeks. But we needed the trading company set up that they can work for the trading company, kind of all those legal, they're getting paid, they got their 401k, all that kind of stuff. So that they're loyal and they're employees, and it works.
So this is really easy. What you've described to me is incredibly easy, Josh. You just fly to China, find a PhD level English speaking engineer who's gone back to China. You have a full-time person managing shipments, and you set up a legal entity that's compliant Chinese with the Chinese government. If you
Wow.
just do those things, I mean, it's like this is a piece of cake. Anything else that you would have to do if someone was going to take this on and do it themselves?
Oh, that's funny. No, I mean, yeah, I'm definitely not smarter than anybody else out there. So anybody willing to put in the effort could do what I did. And yeah, I've described a couple lucky breaks. But yeah, no, it was a bit of a headache. So funny story. I remember I needed to get my first visa just to get over to China, but I spent 25 years in the military, right? And so
Right.
I thought this might be a problem. It wasn't like a general or anything, right? I was a lieutenant colonel, which was like high enough to maybe be on somebody's radar, if you remember, like Oliver North. and I called a buddy of mine that he has a Silicon Valley like design firm, and I'm like, hey, I need some advice on getting a visa. And he was like, I got a guy. He's like, I don't know how he does it. He must be paying off somebody in the Chinese consulate in San Francisco, but he can make it happen. And
Frankly, I
I
don't want to
drove.
know how he's doing it, right? It's like,
I didn't ask too many questions, but I drove to, we'll just call it somewhere in the Bay Area, some dark alley, and met with Mr. Wong, and he squared me away. But one of the things he advised me, as I was an Army chaplain as well, is he's like, "Oh, don't put that on any of your stuff. You are an Army staff officer."
there we go. I
And
mean,
so
frankly, they love generals. They do not love chaplains. So I'm glad.
no, they're afraid there's going to be some sort of Christian uprising and overthrow the government. I don't know what the deal is exactly, but he was like, yeah. Um, uh, so no, that was one of the things that was a pain in the butt is you have to get what's called an apostille, uh, which I didn't know what that was. Is basically a notary for your business. So the paperwork back and forth, between China and here in order to get the paperwork officially notarized is my business is owning the trading company. Just had to go to the Secretary of State, and it's like a year process, or it can be done quicker than that if you prioritize it. But I'd say it was worth the effort
Mhm.
for the reasons I described.
Well, and so just kind of circling back to a few minutes ago, because again, I'm being funny about this, but all those things that you listed were things that, yeah, you're not a superhero, you're a smart guy, but you just put in the work to solve problems that, yeah, it's no big deal. You just get a notary through the Secretary of State. It's fine. Like all these things that have come together. And the point is that, Josh, now you've had several of our other mutual friends in the space that are like, hey, Josh, I don't want to wait a year for a business notary, whatever, apothecary, whatever that is. We don't even know. I don't even want to know that term. I don't want to meet Mr. Wong in the
Yeah,
back alley in the Bay Area.
yeah,
I don't want to have to try to kiss a bunch of frogs and find a PhD level, engineer.
yeah.
Do you have capacity, Josh, where you might be able to just help us? Because I think there's another black veil. Like Alibaba can create some veils, but like these sourcing agents and like, hey, we're your buddy. Just give us your stuff. We'll go back and we'll price it for you. That can feel really scary also because like a lot of sellers and brand owners like just don't how much like is this guy gouging me? Is it going to be terrible product? Is he going to take my money? Like I think having someone that you trust do this is really meaningful. I mean, I'm just ask the
Yeah,
question here.
yeah.
Can you help other people? Like
Yeah, I think we can. We've been able to, and I'm hesitant to use real names, but there's 3 working on 4 guys in our group that I've been able to help, and yeah, for them it makes sense because they trust me, and
right.
what we end up doing is I just they're transparent on how much they're paying, and I'm transparent on how much I can get it done for, and so we just say, hey, if if I can save you, this, is this a fair percentage? And we just kind of work out what makes sense for everybody. The other thing we're able to do for them, and we have a lot of capacity here, is just using our shipping. So they don't have to worry about it. We're like the one-stop shop. So we can we can land it at their door for an agreed upon cost, and we assume the customs and all that. And so that's kind of been a blessing to, we'll just say, call them Mark and Kelly and another, to not have to worry with China anymore. It was funny. We were trying to think, brainstorming with the team and going, what should we call this? Because we see some potential to like slow growth. We're not trying to like scale anything, but I think we have capacity to help a few more people. I was thinking about like the My Amazon guy, like a really corny name would be My China guy, which we crossed off really quick.
Okay.
But we set up shop as Bozeman Manufacturing.
Love it.
Just because we're, Bozeman LLC is my what my main brand goes through. Right now we have the capacity to help a few more folks. We're wanting to really just help folks from the group. But if there's anybody out there that that was interested in like reducing your COGS, I think that's our primary value proposition. While probably decreasing some headache, I'd be willing to talk to you.
I love it. And again, this is like, I have a lot of guests on this show. Very few of the people that come on Return on Podcast do I have as much personal history as with Josh. So I just, I appreciate you saying nice things about our group. We have a great time hanging out as CEOs, but I just want to also just personally say I just have a ton of trust in Josh and his team, the way they operate, the level of integrity. And I personally, for the brands that I serve, like not even just talking to guys like Josh, but just brands that I'm sitting on the board of, or I'm the fractional CFO, I've had so many terrible experiences where you thought a sourcing agent was doing right by you, and they're just so late or so disorganized, or the documentation got screwed up and you got stuck in a port. I just think picking this partnership well is really valuable. And it's almost like anything else, Josh, like you can do all the things that Josh described doing. You can, and you don't have to pay anybody. But like sometimes you can pay just a little bit to shortcut 2 years worth of work and get the benefit in that way. And just for those of you who are busy and would rather have a trusted team do it, I do just highly recommend Bozeman Manufacturing.
Yeah, and there's been a couple times where guys in the group have come to me and we've done the research and said, "Nah, stick with your supplier. We can meet your cost, but we can't do better." And why go through the pain of switching, especially if it's like made in America. I've had to tell people, no, that value proposition is worth more than I can save you. So don't mess with
Josh. I know you were like an Amazon brand owner kind of first. So does Bozeman even have like a website or a contact area where if people wanted to learn more about this?
We have Bozeman-manufacturing.com, but it's an old site that I put up a while ago. So we just went through the process of, doing new logo, and they're redoing it. But
perfect.
I set that up when I'm a retired veteran. And so that was a government facing site as we were looking to take on some contracts from the government, and, whatever. But
cool.
Anyway.
We're not doing Josh is it'll be a few weeks before this episode really hits the waves and goes live.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, by a couple weeks we'll have that up, or a couple months, whatever the case may be.
Bozeman-manufacturing is the website, but I'll make sure there's good links, good URLs there in the show notes, whether you guys are wherever you're catching this content. And Josh, I just like really, I think you're really understated in the way you describe this, but the work you've done, I know this as an insider, as a friend of yours that's lived in your P&L with you, right? At one point, like you've had a massive impact on your own business, and the fact that you've used that work to make other businesses better as well. It's pretty awesome, dude. So I just want to say I appreciate you.
Thank you. I think my point is that we're not trying to like scale this out, or let me say it differently. 75% of what goes through the trading company is stuff that I'm selling on Amazon and Walmart and whatnot. So it's for me still. But there's some additional capacity that I'll be glad to share.
Awesome. I don't even know if you remember what you said last year, but I always ask my guests the same question. I'm just going to ask you again, whatever comes to mind,
Yeah.
spitball it here. But this is still kind of a James Clear Atomic Habits junkie podcast. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our habits. I'm just curious. Recently, has there been a habit, hack, practice, routine that you feel like is giving you an unfair advantage or a great ROI, just professionally or personally?
Um, I'm gonna just take an easy one, but one I just really believe in, and it's like running. And
Mhm.
so, um, I wouldn't say like I'm a runner, right? So don't think I'm like different than anybody else out there, but I do run. And running, so there was a study of clinically depressed people, and I'm not a clinically depressed person, but I struggle just like everybody else, right? When things are falling apart. But they said, okay, we're gonna take 250 of them, we're gonna put them like give them like whatever the psychotropic drug is, and the
Sure.
other 250 we're gonna prescribe to them 20 minutes of walking every other day. And the walking group far surpassed the Prozac group or whatever it was. And man, I just think that for us is busy people, to not take advantage of the benefits that are available through exercise, it's crazy. Um, I do a lot of my best thinking running. So if I have a problem I need to solve, I will go for a long, slow run and just like let it turn. And so then you get back and you basically have your answer. Not only, I mean, it does all the other things that we all know about, like it allows you to have a glass of wine in the evening, um, or whatever the case may be. So um, running.
It's honestly, I know it's so simple, but you kind of know this, Josh, but I'm trying. By the way, if Josh and I were standing next to you, one of us would be obviously in much better physical condition than the other. It's Josh, but I'm working hard, man. I'm going to run a half marathon here in about 2 months.
Yeah.
And it has been amazing, Josh, to even see just the small improvements. I'm not
Yeah.
running as fast as I did in high school when I was running a lot, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's real. Awesome.
yeah,
And I think that running's like, I call it the gateway habit. If you can
yeah.
run, it's going to unlock, you're going to start eating better and you're going to start sleeping better and you're going to start, all these other things that, you should do. It's a little easier if you're disciplining yourself on that front. All right. Amen.
Hey, I love it. Hey, seriously, for those of you guys who have made it to this point in the podcast, don't let that slip away. You're feeling stressed, you're having a hard time managing your thoughts, you're needing clarity of mind. Go take a walk, go take a run, do the little things. I remember, Josh, you and I both have some history in the kind of missions world. And I was serving as a full-time missionary in Kenya for a short stint. And I never
Wow.
forget the guy that was like leading us coming in
Wow.
saying, all right, guys, there's all sorts of things we could talk about right now, but let's
What
start with this.
organization were you with?
I worked with a group called the Navigators for
Navigators. Okay. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And
In
so
Kenya. Sorry, Brooke.
the boss man was like, all right, guys, we could talk about strategies, we could talk about Bible studies, we could talk about progress. I want to start with this. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? How's the
Yeah.
room going? How's your like all this stuff is just and so I think the way I've applied that in my life going forward is like, man, when I feel like things are out of kilter, don't try to overanalyze it. You probably just need to go for a run or go get a good or
For sure. Yeah. You'll feel better after a run. You might see the world a little differently.
yeah, well said, dude. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining the pod. Josh Gilliam, Bozeman
Sure.
Manufacturing. We'll make sure that the links to his website are in the show notes. We definitely have you back, Josh. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate you. Take
All
care.
right, and we're gonna close today's episode again. Just both of us want to reach out and just say thanks. It's your time is valuable, your energy is valuable. We hope you glean a few things related to your supply chain or running your life that help you going forward. Hey, until I see you next week, hope you kill it. Take care.